Well, positive good morning, sports fans, and welcome to another edition of the PR Man and the Coach Talking Ball on the Ballfather podcast presented by Sports Keeter. It's your man, Reggie Roberts, longtime NFL communications executive, and my super cool co-host, NFL analyst, Mr. Mike Smith. What's up, Coach? How we doing, man?
I'm doing great, Reg. I hope you are. It's the off season, but we're getting to talk about all kinds of stuff. Non-game playing season.
Yeah, I tell you, every week you're thinking, okay, well, it'll be a quiet week, and there's no quiet weeks in the NFL. There's just none. There's always stuff going on. We got contracts. We got guys learning new offenses. You know, we got guys graduating from college. We got all sorts of stuff. But I tell you what, the one thing I'd like to lead off with is talking about, you know, guy who made some news a couple of 3 weeks ago, Lamar Jackson, with the new contract, $250 million. You know, going to be the NFL's highest paid player when we kick the ball off at $52 million a season. Think of it, Mike, $52 million. We'll be playing for $52 million in 2023. You know, apparently he's learning new offense. You know, he showed up to the OTAs, to the installs, and he's real thrilled with the offense. Todd Monken's offense. He's really excited talking about it. Believes a philosophy changes was needed to happen. What do you make of what he's saying? He's talking about it's going to be more throwing, less running. You know, I saw that. I thought that's interesting. I said that's interesting. The guy who is NFL's all-time leading quarterback. I thought that was an interesting headline when I saw that the other day. You got thoughts?
I do, Reg. I think it's going to be a different Baltimore Ravens offense this year with Todd Monken calling the plays. Todd has done a very good job everywhere he's been. I've had an opportunity to work with Todd in Jacksonville and in Tampa Bay. Very smart, and he's going to figure out what Lamar Jackson does best, and he's going to make sure that he builds that offense around his strengths. And Lamar does run the ball extremely well, but he's going to get an opportunity to throw the ball, and they've given him some weapons as well at the wide receiver position. So they're making a commitment to help Lamar Jackson on the offensive side of the ball being able to throw it. And I think you're going to see that, and Todd's going to put some real good schemes together with his offensive staff. And I think you're going to see a completely different offense. It's not going to be so centric on him running the football. They're going to be throwing the ball around the yard a little bit.
You know, the only thing that I caution that I'm a little nervous about is, you know, Lamar's improved on throwing the ball since he got out of Louisville. He came out of Louisville. He's improved. But, you know, when I think of Lamar Jackson, you know, I'm not thinking of a guy who's going to complete 65, 70% of his passes. I don't think he's done that his entire career. Will Monken be the guy to be able to raise that completion percentage based on the scheme he's going to run?
I think Todd will figure out what Lamar does the best in terms of throwing the football, and he'll make sure that the offense is built around that. And that's the thing I think good coaches do is you got to evaluate what your players do well and accentuate that, and the things that they don't do as well, don't ask them to do it. And that's what a good coach does. And Coach Harbaugh and Todd, they're gonna get Lamar playing even at a higher level. I really believe that.
Well, he's very excited about his receivers. You got OBJ there. Nelson Aguilar's a good player. They drafted what's the guy from Arkansas, Zay Flowers. They drafted him. He's a really good player. Should be a pretty good pro because he's a really good player at Arkansas. You know they're really good. I saw a stat the other day that said the Ravens are 16-1 when Jackson was 90 yards or more, which is obviously a very good stat. But he's also taken, since he's in his 5 years in the league, he's taken an NFL high 877 hits. That's a lot of hits. So obviously you want to get that number down. New offense probably going to help him probably get that done.
Oh, there's no doubt he's going to take a lot less hits in Todd Monken's offense than the previous 3 or 4 years. And it's going to be a offense that they're going to do everything they can to protect him, because as you mentioned when we started the show, I believe it's 52 million. They got 52 reasons to protect him.
Yes, sir. 52 million. 52 million. Highest paid player in the game, 52 million. So Yeah, we need to not we almost need to put a purple jersey on, not a purple jersey, like a neon orange jersey on him when he's out there playing. We can't hit him, get him hit.
Yeah, Reg, and we'll talk about it here at a later date, or maybe some today. But right now there's three NFL quarterbacks that are making over 50 million now. I mean, it's just crazy. The money just keeps going up and up.
It really does. Well, let's take our NFL jet and zoom down and go over to Denver. Where there's a new sheriff in town, and Sean Payton, and they made some news this week. Payton's out there. They're doing the install. Everybody out there. And I remember when in 2008, when this new guy who was a former Jacksonville Jaguars quarterback came in, he used to say this one thing. He used to tell the players, "You get what you earn." And I read that yesterday in an article out of Denver where Coach Payton during the install and all since he's been there has said, "Hey guys, doesn't matter if you draft in the first round, doesn't matter if you're drafted in the last round, doesn't matter if you're a street free agent. Everybody, we'll make the decision as to who's going to play based on what we see out here in the evaluation of what the tape says." He's told everybody that in Denver. What do give our viewers a sense of what goes on when a new coach comes in, brings in a new coaching staff, and the install this time of year goes on, Coach?
Well, it's a new offense, it's a new defense, it's a whole new set of rules, and you want to establish those rules. And I think that's what I think there's 8 new coaches in the league this year, and they're all doing the same thing. And Coach Payton, Sean's an old school guy. He learned from Bill Parcells, and that's where I heard that saying when nothing's original. You get what you earn in this league, and you earn what you get. And that was something that I'd heard Coach Parcells say many, many years ago. And I think when you set those parameters, it puts everybody on an even playing field, and that's what guys want to do. They want to compete, but they want it to be on an even playing field. They don't want to have a situation like they had last year where the quarterback had an office in the in the building. Everybody's on a level playing field in terms of competing, and I think that's what Sean is trying to get everybody to understand. Nobody's got a guaranteed spot. Everybody's going to compete, and they're going to put their roster together based on what they feel gives them the best chance. Doesn't matter what you did last year, what team you were on, and Sean's going to make those decisions and his staff based on what he sees on the field.
Well, I think it should be. I mean, I can remember during the opening press conference when they introduced Sean as a new head coach. I think somebody asked him about, hey, the quarterback had his own his trainer, his guy had an office here in the building. Well, and Sean goes, that won't be happening. He just kind of said it very tersely. He goes, that won't be happening here. So, I mean, he's the new sheriff, and Sean, you coached against him for a number of years. What's his personality like, Coach Smith?
Oh, he's ultra competitive. And I think most great guys in the, great people that are very successful, they're ultra competitive, and he'll do whatever he needs to. He's a tireless worker. He's a grinder, and the people around him are going to understand what their role is. It's going to be identified, and they're going to go out and they're going to compete. And it wouldn't surprise me one bit if there's the biggest turnaround this year will be with the Denver Broncos.
Wow, that's big. Okay, all right.
Yeah,
okay.
No, I think that a new head coach in the position there in Denver with Sean, he's going to get it turned around. He's going to get it turned around quickly because he's a winner. Yeah, and he knows how to deal with all 53 men on the roster, but especially he knows how to deal with a quarterback, and he's proven it with Drew Brees there in New Orleans for all the years. And I think Russell Wilson still has some gas in the tank.
I think you're right. I think you're right. That was kind of a weird anomaly. What went on with them last year? It was just really weird, and I'm looking forward to seeing what Coach Payton does. Matter of fact, I was on the phone with a good friend of mine the other day, Jim Trotter. We were talking a little bit about it. he says he thinks this could be the story of the year, the turnaround in Denver, based on the personnel they have, based on his background and track record with quarterbacks, just like you mentioned. He thinks the Broncos are going to be the biggest story turnaround of the year.
It would not be a surprise at all if that happened, in my
Yeah,
opinion. Agree with
yeah,
Jim Trotter on that.
yeah. We're gonna switch to Pittsburgh now. There's some news out of Pittsburgh. Now that Big Roethlisberger is not playing football, he's got a podcast, and he had Kenny Pickett, the new Steelers quarterback who replaced him, and he's on the podcast. And middle ways through the podcast, he basically tells Kenny, he says, "Hey, I just got to be honest." He goes, "I'm going to take some grief for this, but I was rooting against you when you first replaced me." He says, and he says, "I know I'm going to take some grief for this, but I was cheering against you because I didn't want you to do well because I thought it would tarnish my legacy." And everybody that I've talked to when that first hit the news hit the airways, I was like, "What are you talking about? You're a 2-time Super Bowl winning quarterback, 6-time Pro Bowler. As soon as the 5-year mark hits your time as a retired quarterback, they're gonna give you the gold. They're gonna put you on a jet and take you to camp. I mean, you're going. You're gonna be there. I mean, why would you say something like that about another guy replacing you? Why would you? I mean, your legacy is cemented. I mean, what's your take on that, Coach Smith?
Yeah, I was surprised. I really was. Ben has had a great career. I mean, like you said, it's a first ballot Hall of Fame career, and you got to be careful what you say in this business. And there's so many opportunities for your comments to become public. And I guess he felt okay saying it. I mean, I appreciate his honesty, but I think you got to always be careful about. Don't always say what you think. Be careful about how you say things. I don't I don't agree with it ever putting somebody down, and wishing bad luck or ill feelings towards someone. That's just something that you don't do publicly. And now
Right.
He came out and he knew, because he said it. From what I read, he said, "Hey, I'm going to get hammered for this," but he came out and said it. So you gotta, and on one sense, you got to say, okay, well, he was being honest. But as you know, Reg, you can't always say what you think, but
No.
make sure you think what you say, because you better think about it before you say it.
Well, you and I have had that discussion, over the long time we worked together in Atlanta, and since then, things we've worked on, as civilians, that I call us civilians now that we're not working directly in the NFL. Uh, we talked about those things, and a little bit, to give Ben credit, he sort of walked it back a little bit, or Pickett's they got Pickett to amplify what he thought about what the comments were, and he says, "You know what? I respect the guy because the guy was being honest," and he kind of let him off the hook a little bit. And he said, "Now, we talk a lot. He said he was cheering for us, cheering for the team, and he says, we want everybody to cheer for us and be in our corner. And he's now using Ben as a resource, which I think is good. It's good for the game. It's good for the city of Pittsburgh, and it's good for Ben, and it's good for Pickett, and it's good for the Steelers to have that guy coach helping that quarterback become great."
Well, it is. It's just, I think it's a little awkward in terms of how the thing got started, and it sounds like it got started by some ill feelings or feelings that maybe he may be better than me. Maybe that's what he was thinking in the long run. But hey, you want everybody to especially with your team, and I mean, Ben Roethlisberger's team will always be and has been the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, as you mentioned, all the Super Bowl wins, he's going to be a Hall of Famer. He needs to hold up, and it sounds like that's what he's doing now. He's, they talk, and hey, what a great resource for Pickett to have Ben Roethlisberger in his corner.
Absolutely. I mean, think about it. You think of the Steel City, you think of toughness, you think of Mean Joe Green, Bradshaw, the great Chuck Noll, all the great successes they've had, Lynn Swan, the Steel Curtain. I mean, you think of Roethlisberger, you think tough, you think playing hurt. I mean, you want this guy, you want this guy in your corner. And Pickett says he thinks it's great. He sees they've got a good relationship. They text back and forth. They spend some time together during the offseason. So you want that relationship to continue because that can do nothing but help Roethlisberger and the Steelers and Kenny Pickett.
Yeah, and really the new quarterback, that's who it's going to help. I mean, he's going to learn so much from Ben. I just think it was probably ill stated what he said. You might think that, but it, to me, it doesn't serve any purpose. Really, it doesn't serve a purpose for helping Ben. It doesn't serve a purpose for helping the Pittsburgh Steelers.
You're exactly right. You're on with the PR man, the coach talking ball on the Ballfather podcast presented by Sport. Mike, can you give our listeners and our viewers a sense of what happens this time of year? You got new coaches, OTAs are going on, offensive, defensive, and special team installs are going on. For those who don't really understand what happens this time of year as far as the players and the coaches learning the new offense or learning the new schemes, give our viewers and our followers a little bit of a sense of what you do, what the position coaches do, what the coordinators do, and what the players are doing this time of year.
Well, Reg, we're in right now. We're in OTA period, but they break the offseason down into 3 phases: the NFL and they have the CBA sets it in stone. It's negotiated into the contract between the players union where they have 3 phases in the offseason. The first phase is what they call phase 1. It consists of about, I think it's 2 weeks of working out. It's limited to you can only meet and work on rehabbing and strength and conditioning, and that goes on for 2 weeks, and then it switches over to what they call phase 2, and that's a 3-week period in which you can go on the field. The team can actually go on the field, but there's a big but with it. The on-the-field workouts, they can only include individual and group instructions and drills such as what they call perfect plays, where you're running them against air. The players can line up against each other, but it has to be done in a walkthrough. So they go through 2 weeks basically in phase 2 of just doing walkthrough. So they get an opportunity to meet. They have their meetings. Then they go out on the field and do it in a walkthrough speed. And then we get into phase 3, Reg, and that's what we're in right now. And that consists of 4 weeks where in those 4 weeks, you have 10 days to go out and practice. It's the closest thing to looking like football as we know. I mean, you sat out there, you know how those phase 2 walkthroughs look like.
Yeah.
You go out in phase 3 and you've got 10 days to do it. And there's no live contact, but you can have 7-on-7, 9-on-7, and 11-on-11 drills. You're wearing helmets and helmets and no pads, and you're going out there and you're competing. Now, to me, that's the toughest area to follow the rules, because guys want to go out and you get to work against each other, and it's not in a walkthrough speed, and it can be a little bit physical, and you can get into some trouble. And It sounds like somebody's already gotten into trouble this year. Every year, somebody's gonna be stretching the rules, or I used to tell our guys when we would go play a game, we were going to go play on the line, not above or below the line. For us to succeed, we wanted to have that edge, and that's something that is hard to, it's hard to dang do in the off season. We can't play with that edge because they have so many rules, and everything we're doing is videoed from 5 different angles, and the NFL has access. It's not the individual clubs video, it's the NFL's video, and they can they can look at it. And I think that's what's happened in New Orleans, in New England. Yeah, and then they throw in at the end, they have a mini camp, and that's all of this stuff that we're talking about is not mandatory. Guys don't have to show up, and then they have we have a mini camp and most of the time it's done uh, in June. It kind of stops the off season. That's the end of the off season where they come out and they
Right.
have the mini camp. And new head coaches, they're entitled to conduct an additional mini camp, because they're a new staff. And I don't know, is there eight new head coaches
Yeah.
this year? So they've all been able to get that extra week. And that's kind of what's going on right now. It's the closest thing to looking like football that you'll see in the off season in the NFL. As you know, Reg, those
Yeah.
walkthroughs, you look out there and it doesn't look like football.
Mike, it really doesn't. But let me ask you this: when you were running, when you were in, you've been a bunch of different places. You were in Baltimore, part of a Super Bowl winning team. You were a very successful coordinator in Jacksonville, very successful head coach in Atlanta, and you finished your career in Tampa. When coaches say it's voluntary, specifically when you're a head coach, what does that mean? What does that mean? I mean, because we always thought in the building, the guys in the front office, guys in the building always thought, you better have your butt here. Coach Smith's here, Av's here. You better have your butt here. What does that really mean?
Well, it means that you don't have to show up. That's what it means. And we would like everybody to be there.
Right.
We're building a team, and the way you build a team is you have the opportunities to be together. You need to be together. And I would say 90% of the time, everybody's there. Occasionally, you're going to have a guy that's got something on his calendar that pops up that he's not going to be able to be there, or there's guys that aren't happy with their contract and they're sitting out. There's a handful of them that are doing that. But for the most part, everybody needs to be there. And now there's certain instances where guys, Tony Gonzalez, Tony didn't need to be there, but he was there. How much work he actually did on the field. Tony didn't need to run any more routes in practice, really. You need to work on some timing and stuff. So there's certain guys that aren't, but we would like to see everybody. When we were there in Atlanta, we'd like to see everybody there. And I'd say we were probably 95% of the time on a given day, we had 95% of our guys there. And you don't make it a drag on them. It's, you're quick. You have meetings, you work out, and you're done by noon. So guys can go and hit the golf course if they want to, because remember, this is the off season, so to speak. And they've collectively bargained that they can only have one mandatory mini camp, and really that's all they're required to do. So these guys are voluntarily coming to work. Now they do get paid, not much, but they do get a stipend for coming in to work out. But it's not a whole lot. I don't, it's not even it's not even enough to have a good meal with your wife or your girlfriend.
Let me ask you this question. Yeah, if you we're going to talk about in our next segment. We're going to talk here a little bit about the salary cap and rules, and something that you and I talked about a little bit about how you think it's structured. But if you could change anything about the whole phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, just thinking live, what would you change, and what do you think would make it a little bit more competitive and a little bit more beneficial for the teams?
Well, the union in the league have gotten together. I mean, this has been a dance they've been doing for 25 years, maybe even longer, about having to come to work in the off season. That it's a grind, the season is. And I think that they've got it down to where you have 10 OTAs, and that's really, an OTA is like a practice during the season, closer to that than some of the other things. And they're only doing it 10 times in the off season. And I happened to be looking the other day, there's some teams that are only using 7 or 8 of them. They're not using all 10 of them.
Wow.
So I do think, I do think that we have an issue in our preparation and I don't really call it an issue, but when you think about it, they're not really, football is the only sport that you're not really playing the game in your off season. If you're
Right.
playing baseball, it's easy to go out there and you can play baseball. You're playing
Yeah.
basketball, you're going to go out there and you're going to go work 1-on-1, 2-on-2, 3-on-3. But you can't ask these guys. It just isn't physically possible to ask these guys that are playing in the National Football League to go out and actually play the game of football in the off season. You can't do it, or
Got it. Right.
you won't have any players for the
Go on,
regular
play.
season. Everybody
Yeah.
realizes that, and it's a dance that you've got to go through. What I tried to do, and what, as you know, there in Atlanta, we tried to make it, hey, fun, and we'd have some other activities to get the guys to come. It's more about the camaraderie. It's more about the meetings, um, and putting in and installing the offense, the defense, and the special teams playbooks. And that's the thing that you want to get done. And then you get a chance not to proof it, but you get a chance to at least go on the field and get something out of your time on the field in terms of your installation. The mental part of it, you can't just sit there and work in the classroom and think these guys are going to get it. They got to go out there and see it on the board, walk through, do it half speed, then do it full speed. And they're not going to do it full speed until we get to August, late July and August, when we get an opportunity to really get prepared for in the preseason practices.
Our guys talked a lot about when we were in Atlanta about, during the phase 2, specifically phase 3, there was a lot of team building things going on. You did a lot of that as far as building the team. You went in the locker room. You talked a lot about that, and you're right. We had 95, 90, 96 same participation. I mean, I don't remember guys just blatantly being in the media saying, well, I'm not coming. I mean, we had some contracts. So we had some contract stuff every now and again, but most of our guys showed up, and that's a little bit of a testament to you and Thomas and the guys who were working there to get our guys making an environment where guys wanted to be there.
Yeah, you want it to be an environment where it's not it's the off season, and you need to do that, and you can't make it anything that is physical, because that's not the time to be physical. And I think we're seeing right now, every year it happens, and it just happened in New England. The New England lost 2 days of OTAs. So instead of having 10 opportunities, they're only going to have 8 because of something that they were doing on the field, or the time limit. They haven't announced and talked about exactly what rule they broke, but something wasn't right, and they took away 2 practices. Now, it happened last year to the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys, the Cowboys were in, and it was because it was too physical. And that's a tough thing. It's a fine line. These guys are physical guys, and when it's supposed to be walk-through speed, sometimes it's hard to keep them in walk-through speed. They're like the thoroughbred horse, that wants to run. You got to hold back and pull the reins this time of the year. And it's really for the good of the players. It really is. And I think more and more coaches have a better understanding and grasp of that now.
Coach, we got about 5 minutes left on the Ballfather podcast presented by Sportskeeda. Can you walk us through your salary cap? We talked about, the salary cap and the guys who make the most money. You mentioned earlier that there's 3 quarterbacks who make $52 million or make $50 plus million a year, which is, I can't wait to find who they are. But give us, and I've talked about this back and forth in your office. So sometimes we chat about this. Give us your sense on what you think, how you think the salary cap, and if in Mike Smith's world, what the salary cap would look like.
Well, Reg, we've got a big issue, and it's something that you could probably talk for 45 minutes or an hour, but let's just look at the numbers real quick here. So right now, the salary cap, let's just say it's 225 million per team. It's really 4.8. All right. So that's the amount of money that you have to spend for your players. Well, we've got a big issue because there's a 53-man roster, and you've got to split that money up. Well, right now, if you look at it, if you take the quarterback position, the offensive left tackle position, the edge rusher, in the corners, and you take what the top 10 of those positions are making on average, you're gonna have it's 52 million for the 52 million for the quarterback, 28 million for the edge rusher, 28 million for the offensive tackles, and 23 million for the corner. So, Reg, if you look at that, that's over. Do the math. That's 55% of the cap being spent on four positions. Now, that's not saying every team's doing that, but I would imagine most teams are at least 45% of the cap is being paid on those four positions.
Right.
In my world, I think there's a better way to do it. And I think what they need to do is this is a quarterback driven league. I mean, the top paid quarterbacks, if you take the top 10, the number one is Jackson at 52, Hurts is at 51, Rodgers is at 50.3. And then at the bottom end of the top 10, it's Allen, Stafford, and Prescott all at 40 million. That's the bottom of the top 10. So why don't we lower the cap and say you can pay one person on your roster whatever you want? They're not capped. So let the quarterbacks, pay those guys. That it's a quarterback driven league. Pay those guys, bring the cap number down, and then spread it out more evenly. Because if you pull 50 or 40 million out of the cap, now you've got a better chance of it being distributed equally amongst the other players. And if you look at it, we're talking about, the four top positions, the edge players. JJ Watt's making 28 million this year. Bosa's right behind him. You got Myles Garrett, Mack, and Chubb. They're all making 22 million or more. And then the corners, you've got, Alexander's making 21 million. Denzel Ward's making 20. Ramsey's making 20. Marlon Humphreys is making 19.5. And those four positions are eating up about 55% of the cap right now, if you look at it. And it just doesn't make sense to me that we're not paying the guys equally, because all 22, it takes all 22. It takes 11 guys on offense, 11 on defense to operate efficiently. And it's tough. I mean, there's the haves and the haves not. So let's make it a little bit better. And let's say you got one person, and it'd be the quarterback almost every time on every team, that he doesn't count towards the cap.
I think that's an interesting concept. I really do. I think it's something that we should probably spend some more time talking about on the Ballfather podcast. I think we might be able to create a movement, because you know what? I agree with you. It takes 11 on offense, 11 on special teams, and you can kind of spread it out over the rest of the roster.
It really is. I mean, how would you like to be, how'd you like to be a guy that plays a position that is never going to have an opportunity to get paid like the rest of the guys on the field?
Like running back.
Yeah, running back is it's so devalued right now, and they're almost like they're disposable. They don't get a second contract. They get a second contract, but it's with a different team. They're going to bring somebody else in. So, it's changing. It really is, and we're starting to have 4 or 5 positions. And right now, it's the quarterback, it's the edge, it's the corner, and it's the left tackle. Those 4 positions are eating up such a large chunk of the salary cap per team. And guys love to have their players on rookie contracts. Philadelphia is now facing, because they had to pay Jalen Hurts, so it changes the whole dynamics of salary cap management based on what players and what position they play are in the first contract. And then hey, the cost of poker goes up when if they're really good and they play quarterback, it's going to change the whole makeup of your roster. And we could reduce that if we took the quarterback position out of the salary cap.
It's interesting, Council. We need to discuss this a little bit further. We're gonna finish up on the Ballfather podcast with a couple of guys who graduated. A guy you competed against, a guy you know very well, Todd Bowles, who got his degree after 39 years, finished up his degree. Jalen Hurts got picked up his master's degree earlier this month at Oklahoma, and then the other guy, Justin Fields, quarterback for the Bears, he got his degree from Ohio State. Always happy to see guys graduate from college, Mike. It's important. I'm always happy to see that happen.
Absolutely, and hey, kudos to Todd Bowles for finally having an opportunity to go back. He's been grinding as a player and as a coach for a long time, and have the wherewithal to go finish it up. And by the way, he missed a practice of an OTA to walk. That says even more,
Absolutely.
Yes. And, Reg, with regards to the two players that you mentioned, Jalen Hurts and Fields, these guys now, they get out after 3 years, the majority, and not the majority, but a lot of these guys. So we need to make sure that with the resources that are available, the NFL does a great job in helping guys go back and get an opportunity to graduate. Because when you go to college, when you attend college, you want to make sure you leave there with that piece of paper that says you are a graduate. It changes so many people's lives. The education is so important. But man, it's cool chopping it up again.
Hey, we'll be back next week, man. We'll have something. Somebody will make OTs. We'll have something.
We'll be talking about something is right. Hopefully it's something good and not bad. And hopefully everybody stays healthy in this final phase of the off season.
Hey, enjoy the rest of your week, Coach. We'll speak to you soon.
All right. Talk to you soon, buddy. Take care.